Well, hi everybody. Welcome to Stratosphere Studio. I'm your host Bill Whittle, and we are back again on a Monday night. I hope everybody's doing well. Well, hi everybody. Welcome to Stratosphere. That was completely intentional. What I do at the beginning of the show is I kind of loop the first kind of words in. It helps our editor Mark to put those those little titles in. So it's just something I've been doing lately. Anyway, it's good to be here. So I hope everybody's doing well. So there was no sound when I came in at all, was there? So I didn't even hear the. Yes, there was. It doesn't matter. Who cares? Who cares? You're not here for the technical expertise. You're here for the free beer. Okay, so I hope everybody's doing well. A couple things as usual going on out there. I heard on the way in, just 5 minutes ago, I'm feeling better, thanks. I'll get to that. Thank you for asking. Found out about 5 minutes ago, I didn't know this, hold that thought, Ed Smith, please, that the Little Mermaid live-action film is coming out. I'm against Disney making live-action films of any kind, personally. I know that Pinocchio's coming out with Tom Hanks, and Pinocchio is my favorite Disney film by far, and I'm not even going to go. But I did find out that they are remaking The Little Mermaid, and The Little Mermaid is now black, or a mermaid of color, I should say. And the trailer... Now, you all know that on YouTube they've taken away the ability to see the downvotes. However, you can, with a Chrome extension, see the downvotes. And it's already passed 1 million dislikes. That's an astonishing number, you know? I even on really popular videos, I don't think I've even seen 1 million likes on something. 1 million dislikes. Now, obviously, the pushback against the pushback has begun to push back. People are completely panning Rings of Power. Everybody knows it's garbage, and now, of course, the reason it's garbage is because of racism. And 3 of the 4 hobbits from the original Lord of the Rings came out in solidarity against all the racism that's being leveled against the Rings of Power thing. And strangely enough, the only one who wasn't in that picture that I saw was Sean Astin, who was previously the most outspoken of them all. But I just want to start by saying, honestly, Elijah, that and Billy, and whatever other guy's name is, that's just a really cheap shot, and you know it. You know it's a cheap shot. Earlier today on, I don't remember if it was Nerdrotic or Doomcock, I heard a quote from Peter Jackson, which must have happened in 2001, something like this. Oh, hey, good to see you, the free man. And basically Peter Jackson says, look, this is before any of them have come out. He said, we're not trying to add our agenda to this. We're trying to deliver Tolkien's agenda. And what a remarkable idea that was. But that was 20 years ago. So now they keep doing this, and people are more and more vocal and less afraid of criticizing this stuff because they've just had enough of it. And of course, it's all because of racism. So if Rings of Power is a terrible show because it's badly written, has nothing to do with Tolkien, you got a female hero who's this high, doing wire foo through the air, and that's Tolkien fans say that's not Tolkien. It's not even good. Even if you didn't know anything about Tolkien, it's just badly written. Oh, that must be racism. So I just say, you know what? Keep going. My position on this is that the more people who get called a racist without cause, which is pretty much everybody, the more people that get called a racist for expressing an opinion had nothing to do with race, the better it is for those of us who've been called this for a long time. It's Razorfist did a Rings video he recommended that you don't even hate watching. It's just appalling. And I am working on a first kind of a, moving back to America for this channel about why Rings of Power failed. And almost all of it's due to the fact that there are no men. There's plenty of men in the story. There are no men working on the project. And by the way, look, it's a guy flick, okay? It's a guy flick. It doesn't mean women can't enjoy it. It doesn't mean that there's nothing for women. Natasha and I watched it twice. We love it. We love it. And when I say it's a guy flick, I'm saying all I mean by that is it's not a chick flick. If I were to remake Sex and the City with 4 guys and had one of them be a fireman and another one be a homicide detective who goes to gory crime scenes every day, the other guy works in the sewers, let's say, and a 4th guy is, I don't know, a guy who sells hot dogs on street vending machines. If I were to put those 4 men in that position, give them all names, and call that movie Sex and the City, and I own the rights to Sex and the City, then I could claim it's Sex and the City, and I could present it as that and try to ride as much of that pre-existing affection that was there. But no matter what I said, if it was about 4 guys, it wouldn't be Sex and the City. And everybody knows it. And so they wonder, why are you so upset about changing the Little Mermaid? Why are you so upset about changing Rings of Power? Why? Must be a racist. No, I'm not a racist. I don't want my culture negated on a daily basis. And I'm not going to put up with it. Sunnyworks said I'd watch that. The Sex and the City with the 4 guys. That could actually be kind of a funny thing. And you know what they don't do? They don't sit around and talk about relationships. Mostly they play, 2-on-2 basketball. But it's Sex in the City because it said so. Because it said so right on the opening credits. When you take an example like that, you can see how ridiculous it is, and you will immediately get a response. Well, Sex and the City isn't for men. It's a chick show. And that's why they sit around and do chick things. No problem with that, obviously, whatsoever. But when you try to turn it into something that it's not, then I have a problem with it. And this is what they continue to do. And this racism response is not only past its sell date, it's rapidly getting to the point now where I don't think there's anybody in the country has been called a racist, including liberals and progressives. Rings of Power is. I was thinking about how I wanted to describe what was wrong with it, and it's John Pershing gets bonus points on the internet. He says we call it sexists in the city. It'd actually be white supremacists in the city, but nevertheless you get the idea. So I was thinking about this, and I think this is the first thing I want to do that has kind of a pre-written content. Because nobody understands Tolkien and nobody is coming from where he's coming from. I don't even think they're doing this on purpose. I just think they don't know how to do it. And I'll give you an example. Wow. Apparently Rush Limbaugh, David Booty says Rush Limbaugh summed up the cast of Sex and the City. Horseface, giraffe neck, the skank, and the brunette who's not half bad. I agree, and my personal favorite is the brunette who's not half bad. Okay, and Rush, I miss him. So here's the first thing. When you, and I haven't seen any of the episodes because I refuse to give them a single view, but I've seen enough clips to feel pretty confident about this. When people in the Rings of Power speak, it sounds like they're making speeches. When people in Lord of the Rings speak, it sounds like they're speaking. And that difference between speaking and making speeches is the difference between a linguist writing language, heroic language for heroic characters, versus a bunch of what cliches do we want to pick? How about, what are those things called? The boba balls, those little horrible jelly things. They're sitting there they've all got apartments on Fountain Avenue. I know exactly where these writers live, and I know exactly what their lives look like. And they're sitting there, and they've been given this task to write something about elemental issues, good and evil. Bobas, right? Elemental evils and goods, clash of titanic ideas. They don't have any titanic ideas. They've never thought about this. They didn't live through World War I. They didn't live through World War II. I'm not a Tolkien scholar, but I would be absolutely astonished if Sauron wasn't a one-to-one representation of Hitler, this evil force that's coming back. It was here before, and it's coming back. Tolkien fought in the First World War, saw horrible things. Speaking of which, by the way, Netflix, to their credit, is apparently going to be coming up, I think, next month. They've done a remake of All Quiet on the Western Front, which is a masterpiece, and it looks like they're. We don't have every other soldier in the Wehrmacht, if it was the Wehrmacht, in the Imperial German Army. It's not every other soldier is a black woman, and they're all right with that. So you've got people who can't write. They don't have the talent to write, and more importantly, they don't even have an idea about what they're talking about. So they write stuff that sounds like what Tolkien sounds like. I mean, if you didn't speak English and you heard somebody speaking Tolkien in English, you could kind of ape, the general thing of it. But they're so far away from any genuine real world experiences that make for a great writer. Great writers have all been through hell. That's the only thing I can tell you. And I know no exceptions to that rule. So they're these cush little creatures, and they just finished writing for girls. So now they're going to write an episode of Rings of Power, and nobody knows why it's failing. And a great example is the one that was in the first one. The real Catherine K. Bill, I missed the rest of the convo about the Little Mermaid. Did they also make Flower transgender? I don't know, but I haven't seen it yet. But the Little Mermaid is black because it's a classic story. It's a classic European story. The Little Mermaid, goes back hundreds of years. It was written by Hans Christian Bonobo, and I don't know why people have a problem with that. But back to this thing. They don't know what it is. They know what it's supposed to sound like, and then they throw rocks at it and try and get close. And the classic example from the first moments of the first episode is, just think about the setup, okay? The elves are outside playing, and they don't look like elves. They look like humans. They're dressed in little white frocks, and they're frolicking. Elves don't frolic. So they're frolicking, and little Galadriel is making a paper boat, and she's about to put it in this tiny little stream, and a male comes up, and a male says, "That's not going to float." And she, "Yes, it will." Let's just stop right there. When has a paper boat not floated? Number one. Number two, the fact that these actors are doing things like frolicking and playing games. I don't think little elves do that. That's what makes elves elves. That's what makes Vulcans Vulcans, and that's what makes angels angels. Somewhere in me, I've got a really good pre-written piece on angels, Vulcans, and elves, and how all three of these are enormously superior to humans in every way, and they are all somehow irrelevant, impotent, right? So anyway, so you got this, and so this guy says that's not going to float. So when has a paper boat never floated? Yes, it will. No, it won't. Yes, it will. So she's being bullied, you see, because all you got to have a strong, powerful woman's got to be bullied by a man, even if the man is 4 or 5. So she puts the boat in the water, and guess what? It continues to go. And since the paper boat is floating, contrary to the expectations of these elves who've lived for thousands of years, even as kids, they start throwing rocks at it. because how dare you make a paper boat that actually floats? So they throw rocks at it, and then Galadriel takes on one of these guys, and she's got her hand up. She's just about to punch him, just like all little girls do when they're confronted with larger males. And then her brother appears, and then he says this line, which is really, really the essence of what I'm talking about. It's a two-way conversation. I don't have it memorized because it's not memorable, but it's something to the effect of, do you know why the older, wiser brother, who's teenage elf now, he's probably 400 years old, he talks like he just got out of, 90210. Do you know why it is that rocks sink but boats don't sink, why boats float? Why? It's because the rocks are always looking downward, but the boats are always looking up at the sky. They're always looking at the stars, and that's why boats float. And my response would have been, neither rocks nor boats have eyes. What you're saying is complete gibberish. I would not expect my older brother, who is now a person of some consequence, to ever say anything quite that stupid. If you're trying to send a message to me, let me know. But to say that the rocks look down and the boat looks up, you see, that's the kind of thing that sounds kind of like it would be deep if you were really, really stupid. That's a stupid person trying to sound smart. Yeah. The boat floats because the boat looks up at the stars. The rock looks down at the bottom. I'm pretty sure the elves, who were shipwrights thousands of years before humans even appeared on the scene, pretty clear understanding of displacement. And so not only have you trivialized the elves, not only have you humanized them, not only have you taken away all of their uniqueness, but you've also made them into idiots. And you've got that sense of, oh, all right, well, that's undeep. I saw a review for episode 3 where I guess it's Elendil, Isildur's father. He's a young man. He's getting ready to go sail for the first time, and their drill instructor, he's an elf drill instructor because you need drill instructors for the elves. The sea is always right. They all in unison. The sea is always right. Oh, geez. Woodless, yes. What? Here we go. I'm sorry. What does that mean? Doesn't mean anything, Woodless. Shut up. I'm telling you, the sea is always right. Now say it. I'd love to say it. I just want to understand it before I say it. I know everybody else is saying it, but I would like to know, what do you mean the sea is always right? Well, the sea always wins. Well, what does that mean? The sea. You're saying if we get in a boat and travel from here to there, the sea decides whether we make it or not? What is the sea's motivation? You're saying the sea doesn't want us to get there, and if we do, then we've somehow gotten past the will of the sea? What? I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Look, I don't mean to be problematic. I mean, I'm an elf like everybody else here. I'm just here to walk quietly through the woods. But this strikes me as not making a lot of sense. And that's when I would be sent on a quest to retrieve the lost chamber pot of Lothlelien or something like that. Now, in the Silmarillion, which is a fantastic book, really, I think it's a better story than Lord of the Rings, considerably better story. There is, in fact, a sea god. Not only a sea god, there is a surf god. It's just like in Greek mythology. Poseidon was the god of the sea, and Triton was one of his sons. He was the god of the waves and the surf. Now, if they were to say the sea god, if they were to say what Tolkien wrote was this: the men of Numenor, which are the race that Aragorn is descended from, a race of noble men. They'd fought with the elves in the first age, and as a reward, the gods, the Valar, the actual gods, created an island for them called Numenor. And they said, here is paradise. It's all yours. All you have to do is one thing, You can sail Numenor's between. So here's Valinor, the undying realm. Here's where all the immortals live. Here's Numenor. Here's Middle Earth. So they've got this whole enormous island, and the Valar, the gods, their actual gods, say, you can sail back to Middle Earth all you want to, but you cannot sail out of sight of shore of Numenor to the east, because that's where immortality is, and immortality is not for you. So for generations, the humans are, thank you, they're very grateful. And whenever a Numenorian ship would go on a long voyage to Middle Earth, I don't know if it was all the wives or the wife of the captain would bring a sprig, a certain kind of a tree, and they would attach this little sprig of green to the prow of the boat, and this would be something to show the sea god that big props to you, sea god, massive respect. We just total props to you. We're just grateful for your assistance. And then they, over generations, they started to get, into decline, and then they started to get completely narcissistic and self-centered, power hungry. Let me know if this sounds familiar. And then they stopped putting the sprigs on, and then they started sailing towards the west. And then they managed to piss off enough people so that basically Numenor was destroyed. So what I'm saying is this. Tolkien is, in the world that Tolkien has created, he has already given you something that is 100 times better than the sea is always right. He's given you a sea god, 2 of them at least, and then there's a god of the wind as well. Is it Manwë? Is it god of earth and wind, sky, air? It doesn't matter. And so, if you want to make a case that we're about to go on a dangerous journey or something, you could say we invoke the blessings of so on, or the sea god is always right. That even doesn't make sense. The sea god will have his way. That makes sense. And how much better is that? Yes, so Manwë was the leader of the Valar, and he wasn't the creator. That was Iluvatar. What was the name of the sea god? Ulmo. Yeah. So, what would have been, if somebody had given it to me to write, because I know a little bit of background, and since I know a little bit about sailing, I would have written it to say, Ulmo will have his way. The sea god will not be denied. And every time we set sail, the first thing we do is we make a prayer and show our respects to Ulmo and thank him for the water in the oceans and ask for his grace as we make this journey. That is poetic, beautiful, interesting, complex, graceful, evocative. The sea is always right is just plain stupid. It's what stupid people write when they want to sound like they're smart. And Rings of Power is nothing but this. It's nothing but stupid people trying to sound smart. I mentioned last time, and I had a chance to refine that thought a little bit, that the hobbits in Tolkien's hobbits versus the Harfoots in Rings of Power. If you haven't seen the picture yet, I showed it last week. I'm sure most of you have seen it. The Harfoots, the hobbits, they're not allowed to use hobbits legally. Otherwise, they would use. Oh, come on, Don. Ulmo isn't a quair. Surely not. He is married, you know. I completely lost my train of thought. Just thought that was too funny. Come on. Oh, okay, the Harfoots. Again, the people writing this show are people who are living on the corner of Fountain and La Cienega, over the hill here, in little apartments that cost a fortune, and they walk down to Santa Monica Boulevard and get a latte. I know these people. I worked with them for 20 years. And so they cannot do this. They don't know how to do it. And now let's go to the Harfoots, the Rings of Power hobbits, and the actual hobbits. I mentioned last time that the hobbits are civilized. The Harfoots are hippies. They're Woodstock hippies. They wear like a one-piece sack of homespun, and they have leaves in their hair, branches, wood, just branches in their hair. That's not comfortable, by the way, and it's not camouflage. So what these idiots are trying to say is, these are people of the country. These are people who are close to the earth. And they don't live in houses. They live inside the barks of trees. You see how natural they are? See how natural they are? This is an urban idiot trying to write about rural people. This is what these urban idiots think rural people are. But Tolkien didn't think that, because Tolkien became a rural person. He did what most successful Brits do, and that is house in the countryside and become a country gentleman, which is why the hobbits wear the same kind of clothes that Tolkien would wear on his day off. You see a picture of J.R.R. Tolkien on his day off, and he's got, maybe he doesn't have a suit, he's just got the tie, the shirt, the cardigan. The hobbits were civilized farmers, and the Harfoots are what Hollywood idiots think farmers look like and how they act. These idiots think that farmers are filthy, dirt-covered people who essentially wander around all day, and they're not very smart. So, Edward Smith says, do the Harfoots also have fleas and ticks? Well, they have, I don't know if they have fleas and ticks. They have insects of color, that's for sure. And so, again and again and again and again and again and again and again. Now, the part that's an actual mystery to me is the credits for these two showrunners on Lord of the Rings. I forget what, it's like one mediocre show, and I forget what it is. I'll find out in a minute here. Somebody can let me know. Why would Amazon bet $1 billion on people with that little experience, when you've got essentially for $1 billion, you can take any director you want in Hollywood or any showrunner that you want? Why would you do that? Why would you go with these two nothing burgers? 30-year-old guys. I don't know if they're gay. Doesn't matter if they're gay. I know that they've never gotten their hands dirty. I know that much for sure. They never got blood on their hands either. I can guarantee you that. So why would they hire them? And my feeling is that because it's all going to come, when it's $1 billion spend, it's going to come down to Jeff Bezos saying yes or no. $1 billion spend, that gets his attention. So they must have gone into Bezos or been introduced to him somehow and convinced Bezos that their vision of bringing our current world into the world of Tolkien, which is what they've been saying from the beginning, that they're the guys who can execute that. And I guess to some degree that's exactly what happened. But the thing that sometimes things are so obvious, it just makes me want to just put my head through a wall. It's so obvious, some of these things. And the one thing that is so obvious of this is their entire rationale for having black elves and female warriors and all the rest of this stuff is because they are trying to make the world of Tolkien look more like the world of today. That's pretty much a verbatim quote. And my point is, people go to Tolkien specifically so that they can get away from the world as it exists today. That's the whole reason that there is a Tolkien universe, is because people would like to escape from all of this garbage that we have to deal with on a daily basis and go live in a world, as we're reading a book or watching a movie, go live in a world where good is good, evil is evil, there's no gray area between it. We're dealing with elemental forces, we're dealing with people who have to pull together, and if they don't, this is why people go there. So to say we want to bring as much of modern America, I don't know, honestly, I don't know why the elves weren't wearing baseball caps with some kind of elven rooms on it, or why not that, or hoodies. Hoodies would have been a better choice probably. Why do that? Because they're idiots. They're idiots. I cannot tell you how stupid the people over that hill are. I cannot begin to tell you how stupid they are. I have mentioned on the Stratosphere Lounge, first time for the Stratosphere Studios, for those of you who may be new, right around 2000, I think. Yeah. I think it was the last job I had before I did my 160 episodes of Sunday Morning Shootout. Right before, I worked on a show that didn't last very long for a season. It was a reality TV show called Classmates, and it was based on the website Classmates. And those of you who are young will have no memory of Classmates because Facebook put Classmates, just obsoleted them overnight. But before Facebook, Classmates, and you had to pay for it. You'd pay like a monthly fee or whatever, but you had to pay some money for it. Classmates was designed to hook you up with people who you had not seen for 20, 30, 40 years. Okay, so I was doing this show for Classmates about people getting reunited on Classmates, and we're going to go out, we're going to cover this, and then we're going to do a real, reality TV segment on it, and then we'll put that on television, not on the internet, on television, so people will go to Classmates. Classmates will make some money. That was the theory. And I was working on this one particular episode, and I'd put together a rough cut, and I would get it. They had probably 4 or 5 producers and 4 or 5 editors, and so it's just the luck of the draw, right? And there was this woman, mixed woman. She was really tall, at least as tall as I am, and I'm 6'1", and she was very slim, looked like a model, and she went by 3 initials. I want to say they were DMA, but I'm not sure. Anyway, she was the producer. I was probably 41. She was probably 27, 24, something like that. I showed her the rough cut of this thing, and she said, "Bill, this is a really great story, but I think we're going to have to simplify it." Simplify it? Sure. What do you mean? Well, I get it, and you get it, but I don't think people out in the middle of America will be able to follow this and understand it. I gave her that look, the actual look. Really? Yeah, I don't know if like farmers or stuff are going to be smart enough to really understand this. And this is before I started doing my political stuff, and I said, okay, I'll simplify it. But as she's walking away, I'm saying to myself, did you even finish high school? Did you finish high school? You don't know anything about anything. There are farmers that are sitting there on tractors reading Tennyson, and you don't have any idea about any of this, do you? You've just got this attitude. And the notes that I have gotten from these people beggar belief. So, this is what happens when you have a complete lack of manhood and stories written by beta male idiots or angry female idiots who are using it to do their wish fulfillment. Galadriel's here comes a cave troll. It's an ice troll, but you get the idea. She's surrounded by her men, which she's the general of. The men just basically stand there in fear, frozen in fear, and then Galadriel comes in and slays this ice troll all by herself. She does some wire fu. I think, I had it described to me, I didn't see it. I think an elf holds up his sword like this, and then she runs along and gets up and jumps on the sword, and then slides down the length of the sword onto the neck of this cave troll, and then takes him out all by herself, because she's a strong, powerful woman. She don't need no man. And people have been calling her Galadriel, which is great. I'm going to throw this out there, although I should probably do it in something that's watched a little better. One of the other things is that they're calling these women warriors, they're calling them girlbarians. And I thought you got to do better than girlbarians, not a very felicitous term. What are these women warriors? And I realized, I know what they are. I know what Galadriel is. She's a barbarian. A Barbibarian. That's what she is. And that is, I think, a term that needs to go down into the lexicon, to be perfectly honest with you. She's a Barbibarian. She's a little wisp of a thing, beautiful, slender, and so on, who acts like Conan the Barbarian hacks people apart with an axe. She's a barbarian. And these barbarians can't exist, and everybody knows it. And it goes on and on and on, and I'm just going to add one more thing. You know, they had to make Galadriel into the ultimate warrior, right? They had to make her into the ultimate warrior. Oh, the scourge of the orcs, I think is an actual line from episode 3. Galadriel is here, the scourge of the orcs. Yeah, this 5'8", thin blonde chick is the one that the orcs are really afraid of. But we've talked about this 1,000 times. An even bigger point is, so let me make sure I get this right. Galadriel used to be the queen, right? She was the queen of the entire elven kingdom of the tree, whose name escapes me at the moment. But she was queen of the elves. She didn't go out slaying orcs because she's the queen. There's 10,000 men that she can send out to go and slay orcs. She has bigger things to worry about because she's the queen. And the idea that somehow going from Lothlorien, thank you, going from queen to soldier, to think that is a step up is just simple wish fulfillment on the part of men-hating feminists who just want to see women punch out men. That's all they want. They're ready to pay billions of dollars to destroy society to do it, you know? I wish you could just do that on your own, on home movies, you know? That'd be great. You guys just circulate it that way, but nobody would watch that, so they have to attach it to Star Trek, they have to attach it to Star Wars, they have to attach it to Lord of the Rings, they have to attach it to all these other stuff. But it's a lie, and everybody knows it. So, anyway. 90s anime always had skinny women battling monsters. Yes, I think anime probably has quite a bit to do with that, Quibo. And I was never into anime, although I can tell you, for my bona fides, that I would make yearly trips from Bermuda to Pennsylvania. And when I was a boy, I was probably 6 or 7, I remember I watched Astro Boy in black and white, first airing. It's the first real anime, as far as I know. And I thought, this is just weird. I don't like this at all. I thought it was lazy. I thought it was lazy animation. It was lazy animation. They couldn't afford to do frame-by-frame animation, so they would take a pose and then just move the mouth, and they take a pose and move the eyes. Now I'm going to get a lot of anime hate. But I don't know. I remember the anime Aeon Flux that was that on Adult Swim? Real stylized, that was really quite good. But anyway, you get the idea. Fire Waco, I'm with you, but I'm not going to repeat that because we're both on the same page and it's a horrible, horrible, evil page. I mentioned on Facebook thing I had a couple of animations to show. Hopefully the single play AVIs. If not, I'll have to convert them. So, look, I'm not knocking anybody's. I'm not knocking anybody's anime at all. Just absolutely not knocking it at all. And I'm not knocking for an instant. Am I knocking the idea of Japanese schoolgirls taking on massive demons? I have no problem with that at all. None. Because anime is a unique, original, not only creation, as a genre. The rules are internally consistent. Those are the rules. You either buy into them or not. But if I were to take over anime and start making anime characters whose eyes were normal size and who just essentially just walked down the street and didn't have freeze frames with all the electrical stuff going, I'd say, well, look at this. It's our new anime. And you would say, F you, Bill, that's not anime. You're just trying to ride on the coattails. Exactly. So, anyway, got a couple of animation things. So, last time I showed some of these animations of the centrifuge I was working on. And I did a lot more work to this. I added a bunch of detail. So I think I've got 2 of those. Do I have the old one? Hang on a minute. Just want to show the old one just so you can see how far it's come here. Let me just have a quick look. I'm not going to spend a lot of time for this. No, I don't think I did. All right, doesn't matter. So I added a lot of detail, and now, and I added engineering detail when I thought that there was a stress load on something. You know, got a centrifuge, and you got to think about it's under a lot of torsional stress. So I started putting engineering things in there, and I really liked it. I'm going to tell you where this is going. I really liked it a lot, and then I realized I got to stop working on this because I'm building myself deeper and deeper and deeper into a hole. I'll show you what I mean. So here is the last two tests of the old centrifuge I was working on. Please play. Yay. So I built this essentially from pieces. This is kit bashed together, and I'm pretty happy with that. I put a kind of a band around it to hold on to it. I added a lot of details to the thing. I really, really like the structure of the arm and the girder work there, and I like the fact that I took flat halves and bent them and made it into that. I'm pleased as I could be with that. And then I think I did another one. Why is that not playing? No, maybe this way. Play. Play. You swine. All right, let's try it again. Come on, play. It may just be a dead file. No, should play. Let's try it again. Play. You bastard. All right, let me just do one more try here, and if that doesn't work, I'll just knock it off. But I'll tell you what all of this is about in just a second here. So let's see if we can play this 11 here. And you go play, bastard. Why? Why are you not working and the other one did? It doesn't make any sense, and it's not fair. All right. Let me see if this one works. It does. All right. So, let me explain something to you. I just finished rendering this thing, and I saw all the goofy stuff at the end. I just finished rendering that. I took it out of the oven while I started the music for the walk-in for the thing tonight. So let me show you these two together, and then I'll tell you what my problem is. Okay, so this is very, very heavy vertex count. So all of the cool little details you're seeing on this one are a result of individual points, individual mesh, and it's extremely complex, it's extremely memory hungry. And the problem is that, play again, you bastard. I said play again. The problem is that if you look at this stuff, it's actually untextured. And I've been building and building and building this thing and adding more and more and more to it. And none of it is textured. And I just realized somebody's going to have to texture this. So I guess it's going to have to be me. And I tried to get back into Substance Designer and all the rest of it. That last animation you saw probably had, I would say, close to 1 million vertices and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, maybe thousands of individual objects. So now I have to do, I have to texture that. So I said to myself, let's texture it in Unreal. So I took an existing model of a spaceship and I brought it into Unreal. Didn't have any textures on it. And it didn't have any textures on it, and it didn't have any mapping coordinates either. So let me show you again what that looks like. Hang on. So this is completely unmapped, and I spent the last 2 or 3 days, I had to put mapping coordinates around all of that, and the stuff that flashes at the end, that's just not mapped. It's just, it's got a rough idea of what to do with the textures, but it doesn't really know what to do with the textures. So I had to texture this. And I had to do it with essentially one texture. I built 40 textures. I put them all together, plugged everything in, and it's like, these are all useless. So I ended up using like 2 different textures, and it took a long time. And I'll just show it to you one more time because I'm actually pretty pleased with it. And obviously I can get the shimmering to go away. You'll have it by next time. it does go to the look I'm looking for. And I love the counter-rotating asymmetrical thingies there. So that's not too bad. And I thought the use of the color, which I don't normally do, I thought that worked great. I'm gonna work out a couple of these mega corporations, which we will eventually crowdsource out. But I'm gonna do a couple of them. A friend of mine came up with a science fiction ship company called Transwelt, Transwelt, I think. It means Transworld in German, Transwelt. So I found a pretty cool logo. Actually, I might be able to access it here, where I got all my logos from for Star Citizen. Oops. So I said, okay, Transwelt, TW. And I went searching, and I found this guy. Log me in. Hang on. Everybody be cool. Nobody panic. Okay. Show me my collections. All right, so come on. So here's a logo. I went looking for a logo for Transwelt, and I found one. Now it's got words below it, but the logo is cool. So it's a shipping company. So I wanted something that looked like it'd be a German shipping company logo. You're going to see something with words underneath it. Ignore those words. Just look at the logo. And I like this quite a lot. Of course, it didn't go in. I'll try again. You miserable swan. Oh, okay, hold on. I know what the problem is. Hang on. Hang on. Everybody be cool. Everybody be cool. Just be cool. Download. Yes. Now this is going to be gigantic, probably. Come on. I'm not giving up. I'm okay. It won't take that kind of file. Fine. I'll do it the old-fashioned way. I'll do a screen grab, and you can't stop me from doing screen grabs, you miserable low-life bastards. Come on. And this way, at least I can cut out the words. Come on. There it is. Okay. And it's got watermarks on it. You get the idea. Blah, blah, blah. So, reason for all of this, there's a reason for everything that we do here. Nothing happens by accident on any of these Stratosphere shows. So here's what I found for the Transworld logo, German shipping company. I like it a lot. It says T, it says W, it looks angular and tough, and it looks like a shipping crate. So I'm going to take this logo, and by happy coincidence, the colors are black and orange. We'll keep those colors. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this logo on top of here, and when we brand it, it'll have the TW on it, on the orange things there. It'll have the TW, and it will say Transwelt, and that will add enormously. And adding all of these little details and stuff would help. So I went to a lot of trouble to texture the ship that you just saw, and I'm going to go to a lot more trouble because I'm probably a little bit more than halfway. But I think the ship looks cool enough to be worth the trouble. So I did not build those, and I didn't add the dings. Thank you for the suggestion, Catherine K. I'm getting there. I'm slowly starting to do it. But Infidel42 says you should put the Maersk logo on there. That's exactly what I'm looking for. It's exactly what I'm looking for, but I can't do the Maersk logo, tempting though it may be. So I have to have a couple of shipping companies, and they all have to have logos and colors so that when I put them on the shipping containers, they'll look like FedEx or UPS or most especially Maersk. And then we can backstory the development of those corporations, what they do, where they're based, and so on and so on and so on. And slowly and slowly this thing begins to appear. So so there's that. I had a talk with a guy today about the project, somebody I've worked with on the Apollo program and Cold War. Basically laid the whole thing out for him. And he said, you need, the number one thing you need is you need to show, as you've seen me talking about the deep fakes. I have some more videos for you here, some new ones, just a couple, I think. So this is, I'll just show these first, and I'll tell you the point of all this. So this is not a deep fake, I don't think. I think this is just really good geometry matching. But take a look at this, kids. That's wild. So the one on the right doesn't exist. And the one on the right does something that's just cool. That's just cool. And I think that looks really, really good. Really good. Oh, there's Trinity. There's another Trinity. Look at all the Trinities. Oh my gosh. It's an army of Trinities. So, this is not deepfake technology. This is just really, this is what Unreal 5 can do, which is handle an awful lot of vertices. That's just cool. And he is, by all accounts, the greatest guy in Hollywood. He's just, by all accounts, the best guy in all of Hollywood. All right, so, this is all done in Unreal. All the cities in Unreal, all the car crashes, all Unreal, the characters are Unreal. It's all, everything you see here is happening in Unreal 5. And I think it looks pretty good. It's about to end here. And, okay. Now, I got something else to show you. I showed you the train station last time, which is, I cannot tell, is CG. I don't think I've shown this yet. This is a great indication of what you can do with geometry, deep faking the picture, and deep faking the voice. Check this out. This is where we are right now.
I am not Morgan Freeman. What you see is not real. Well, at least in contemporary terms, it is not. What if I were to tell you that I am not even a human being? Would you believe me? What is your perception of reality? Is it the ability to capture,
I said Keanu is the greatest guy in Hollywood.
Make sense of the information our senses receive? If you can see,
Mr.
hear,
Adams.
taste, or smell something,
Mr.
does that make it real? Or is it simply the ability to feel? I would like to welcome you to the era of synthetic reality.
Now, honestly,
Now,
if you were to just
what
turn that on and just
do
watch
you
it,
see?
you'd have no way of knowing. That's where we are now. And I got one more to show you, just forgive us, I think. Maybe not. Huh. I know I've shown this before. I'll show it one more time. This is the difference between what was state-of-the-art 5 months ago, metahumans, which everything you've seen me do was metahumans, and then this is metahumans with deepfake on top, and you'll see in the beginning it's the metahuman, and then they'll add the deepfake, and it is really, really, really good. I know I had one more video here somewhere. Where is it? Hang on. Is it you? Hang on. Okay, this is just creepy. All right, so I don't know if there's going to be very much use for what I'm about to show you, other than the fact it's just really, really cool. I'll show you the Scarlett Johansson thing I said I would show you first. So this is that is a metahuman, and it looks okay, not bad. I was impressed when I first saw them, and that's deepfake. Now, it's very low resolution deepfake, but I'm in. I'm in. I think that's utterly, perfectly, fantastically believable. Her nose isn't quite right, though. I think the nose is a relic from the Asian person on the left, on the metahuman they use. But to me, that's night and day. I mean, it's just the difference between success and failure. So I'll end this, and I'll just show you one last thing. This is not so much anything I can use. It's just to give you an idea of how fast the technology is moving. So what you just saw was deepfake technology, and in deepfake you want a lot of pictures of the subject. The reason they use Tom Cruise and they use Scarlett Johansson and stuff is because there's lots and lots and lots of pictures of them for the computer to chew on. This is deepfake technology, and it's using one picture. One. It's not as good, but this is working off of one individual picture, and this is kind of mind-blowing.
Dear fellow
This is the one I don't know if I have any real
this is
use for, but
2 minute
just
papers
watch
by
this
Dr.
out for a
Carol
second.
Zonai Fehér. Today,
5 minutes,
we
I
are
don't know if I
going
can
to
skip
make
forward,
the
probably.
Mona Lisa and other fictional characters come to life through this deepfake
Real time.
technology that is able to create more detailed videos than previous techniques. So, what are deepfakes? Simple, we record a video of ourselves, as you see me over here doing just that.
Can't stress
and
again
with this,
hard
we
enough
can make
that
a
that guy
different
is
person
using 4
speak.
still
What you
frames
see here is my favorite deepfake
from
application
Game of Thrones,
where I
and
became these
look at his
movie
eye
characters
movements. It's
and
doing it in
try
real
to
time
make
off of
them
one
come
photograph.
alive. Ideally, expressions, eye movements, and other gestures are also transferred. Some of them even work for animation movie characters.
You said you can
too.
apply it to animation. I don't see much
Absolutely
improvement
lovely.
there.
This can
to be
and will
perfectly honest with
create
you.
filmmaking
Oh, you can make
much
people
more
smile.
accessible for all.
Yeah, let's see if I can skip ahead. Yeah, let's look at this. Look at this.
Hold on to your papers and have a look at this. Wow. Oh my.
One photo, that's
Yes,
pretty
you are
damn
seeing
good.
correctly. The authors claim that these are the first 1 megapixel resolution deepfakes out there. This means that they showcase
And they've gotten to
considerably more
megapixel now, so you don't have
detail
that
than the previous
kind of
ones.
blurriness or
I
stuff.
love these. The
Yeah, you
amount
can
of
see the old
detail
deepfake versus the new
compared to
deepfake.
previous
And when I
ones
say the old, I
simply
mean 4 or
stunning.
5 months ago.
But, as you see, these are not perfect by any means. There is a price to be paid for these results. And the price is that we need to trade some temporal coherence for these extra pixels.
Yeah, you could do
What does that
do quite a lot
It
of fun
means
things
that
with this. Is there
camera
anything else
and
on here?
ourselves
Yeah, I
do
get
our-
the idea. I think that's about it. Yep. Okay.
that
So
amazing GPU instances to
so all of these tools, as I knew, are getting there faster and faster. But that deep fake on top of CG characters was a quantum leap, and I'd had it floating in the back of my mind, and I hadn't quite put it together. And then I saw it, and I thought, okay. So I talked to this guy today, a producer type guy. Told him the whole story. Told him about the crowdfunding and everything, and doing the scenes, and he had a profound insight. And this is it. He said, okay, Bill, these externals are fantastic. The giant science fiction sets are great. The space stuff is great. The ships are great. All that stuff's fantastic. But you don't tell a story out there. You don't live out there. If you're going to be telling a story, if you're going to do a 50-minute, hour episode, typical TV length episode, you're going to have people just talking, and you're going to have to sell that. And I said, that's really true. So I said, all right, you go think about things, and I am going to spend my next job will be to do a scene inside like a rover or a cockpit, inside some science fiction scene, but just 2 people talking, having coffee. And then we're going to deep fake that, and we're going to see whether or not that is a believable scene. And it only has to be 15 seconds probably. But if I could get that done, then that's great. Now, I've already tried to contact 2 people on YouTube who have done deep fakes. I just saw a guy with a bigger audience who just has been playing with it. I'd really like to get some help with this. But in any event, that's what I need to work on next. And the fun thing is I can show that to you in stages. I can show you. I'll probably end up playing both roles because it's not terribly demanding. And so I'm going to do maybe a man and a woman talking, and I'll do the guy's face and the facial motion capture, and then I'll add a deep fake to the voice, and then I'll do the other part, and I'll deep fake myself into a female voice, and then we'll put those onto metahumans, and then we'll deep fake on top of that, and then we will smooth the whole thing out, do a little coloring, and then the question will be, can you do 20-second spill that look like two people sitting having coffee in a normal environment? If you can do that, then you're home free. It is rather queer of me. You know Bill Whittle? Yes. Is he a queer? Well, he looks like a queer. He's on television like queers. He's married, however. For those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, look up Harry and Paul Quare, Quare, one of my favorite comedy sketches of all time. So, and he is an extremely good shot. Well pointed out, Eric. So anyway, that's basically it. So why don't we go and do ourselves some questions? So I actually was just about to learn the deep. I think it's called Deep Face Lab. I think the software, and I was just about ready to start digging into it, and I just realized the drive is full. Just the drive is full. I was starting to look at the commands, and I just realized, nope, I've learned too much software in the last 2 years. It's drive is full. So anyway, you get the idea. Let's see what we got here. I heard that there's not a whole lot of questions, so those of you who are watching live in the comment section, which is highly recommended, by the way, I will be taking some questions so that I'll run this show at least until 8, at least a 2-hour show. All right, so let me look at the whatchamacallit post here on Face of Book. Hold your questions. Hold on. 2 comments, yes. And you're right, they're both from Eric Blake, I think. All comments. All right, here we go. I'm going to do them because I can. Peace and long life, Citizen Whittle, live long and prosper, image of Eric Blake. Here's something completely different. Are there any storytelling genres you appreciate and maybe even enjoy, of which you couldn't ever really see yourself creating stories of your own? What are they and why? That's a very interesting question. It's a very interesting question. First thing came to mind is Westerns. I really like Westerns a lot. I don't have the knowledge to write a Western, because despite the fact that I heavily demeaned those city people that were trying to write rural folks, I don't know much about it. And the difference between the two of us is I know that I don't know, and they don't know. I've never, strangely enough, because all we do is talk about animation, but all the deep fake talking that I've done, all the stuff I brought in to show, hey, look how good this looks, is all based upon the fact that I don't want to do animation. I really don't. If I thought it was going to look like animation, I'm not interested. I watched the Star Trek animated series when it came out because it was the only thing on the air, but the thought of watching it now just makes me want to cringe. It's just not something I'm interested in, but it can be fantastic. One of the genres that I most definitely do want to do and will do, we can get this first thing rolling, is the historical stuff. I want to tell the story of Taffy 3, and I want to tell it like a movie, not like a documentary. I want to do the same thing for Frank Luke and same thing for John Paul Jones, and the Doolittle raid, and we can. I mean, given what we just saw, given a little time, I would not be surprised if we, for example, we could do the Doolittle raid and have the guy playing Jimmy Doolittle be Jimmy Doolittle. There's enough pictures of him, I'm sure, to work. There are photographs there are photographs. Don't let that go, Wild Ginger. If I bring it back, if I don't get to it, there are photographs of each one of the 16 bomber crews. So every one of the 5 guys on each one of those crews, there's a picture of. So you could say this is exactly what the crew of Ruptured Duck looked like. And I want to tell that story very much. Now, Wild Ginger leads to a very good question. Let me just see if there was a second part. I know you got a second question, Eric. We'll get to that in a second. No, okay. So back to the comment section here, because Wild Ginger said, Bill, what did you think of the recent Midway movie? I hated it. I just hated it. There's a Midway battle scene in one of the video games. I think it's Call of Duty, but it's something like that. It's a cutscene. It's an animated. And at first, it looks great. They're on the elevator, on the Hornet or whatever, and they get in their planes. The takeoff looks great. And the second we get into battle, it's like, oh, but specifically with the Midway movie, this is criminal abuse of computer graphics. I cannot stress this strongly enough. Computer graphics allows filmmakers to forget about creating the images, right? Forget about the fact that you can make an aircraft carrier and a Wildcat and all the rest of it. Forget that for a second. It allows the camera to go places that the camera could never go if you were shooting this in the real world. And this out of control nightmare has to come to an end. This business of how much more stuff can you shovel into this movie? The story's not dramatic enough for you. Here's a great example. I can't remember if this was from the Midway movie. I think it was. Might have been from the cutscene, but I'm virtually positive it was the movie. So you get this guy that we sink 4 aircraft carriers in 5 minutes. And they've got a scene where the guy's doing the dive bomb, and it may have been Best himself, I think, his character anyway. And he's holding on to the bomb. He's holding on to the bomb lower than anyone's ever gone before, because you got to add drama to all this other stuff. So he releases the bomb, and the bomb hits the carrier, and then the dive bomber comes out, and as it comes out, the wing brushes into the water. You brush a wing into water, that plane cartwheels immediately. Put that aside, right? This is exactly the kind of thing I'm talking about when it's a CGI abuse. You should be put into CGI jail for that. Hey, we got a first-time comment. I have to put on my spectacles because it's light green. Loves the Gorn, as do I. Thank you. Sorry. Skoogog. Skoogog? I hope it's Skoogog. Thank you. I'm always happy to see first-time commenters here. So, you see what I'm saying with this? When you've got the ability to throw up so much anti-aircraft fire that you can't see the carriers anymore because of the bullets that are whizzing right past you, billions of bullets whizzing right past you, none of you hitting, and all of this stuff, just shovel more elements, more and more and more. It gets to be like what my friend Brent Reagan said about some of these flight displays. It gets to be so cluttered. He said it's like a cocktail party. You can't pick out a conversation because of all the noise. So I hated Midway, hated it. And I was looking forward to it. It was badly written, badly acted, but the CGI was so terribly, depressingly over the top. It looked like Roland Emmerich directed that movie. Now, in Top Gun, Maverick, there were a lot of those shots that were CGI, but the director of that film had the great good sense to not create a single CGI shot that could not have been created with an actual camera. In other words, he could have had a really good-looking Hornet blow right past the camera 3 feet away, but he didn't do it, because if he had done it, you would have been out of the movie. He's got shots of them coming down the canyon as if he had a camera there, and that's why it worked. That's why it worked. Yeah, and Eric says it's the reason why I hate the shaky cam. If a camera is endlessly bouncing around and jerking around, you can't understand what's happening. There's an animated film I saw on Dust, I think, on YouTube, that actually looked, the animation was really good, but the camera shake was so intense that every single comment, I mean, every comment was, it would have been nice if I could have seen it. I'm sorry, I got to go throw up. Why don't you? What are you thinking? Camera shake and computer animation is put in there to give you the impression that it's being held by a person. And in Unreal Engine, you can basically do this. In Unreal Engine, you can take this iPhone, have the iPhone communicate to your thing, and I can see the scene in here, and I can direct the movie just by looking at my iPhone. But I don't want to direct movies. I wouldn't direct movies that way in real life. I wouldn't just have them go out there and just do this. I'm kind of old school like that. So whenever you have that kind of abusive graphics, it takes you away. It takes you out of it. And the classic example is car flips over and the tire goes doink, 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 and misses you by a fraction of an inch. You do a shot like that, I'm out. I'm just out. And, they spent some money on it. Plus, I mean, I'm not entirely sure I buy Woody Harrelson as Nimitz. And as for the rest of the cast, I have no memory of what they were, said, or looked like. Just planks of wood as far as I was concerned. So, anyway, let's see, Edward Smith, you want to keep me interested? Tell me the names of every pilot who tried to sink that aircraft carrier and failed and died trying. Let me imagine how hard it was to sink that carrier. Absolutely, 100%, you win the internet for the night, Edward Smith. If you don't show Torpedo 13, if you don't show that in almost exactly as much detail as you showed the dive bomber attack, then you have cheated your audience and you have cheated history and you've cheated those men. For those of you, I'm virtually positive it was Torpedo 13 from Enterprise, I think. Prior to the dive bombing attack that essentially mortally wounded all 4 carriers in 5 minutes, torpedo bombers had gone in piecemeal, and I think it was Torpedo 13. Every single one of them shot down, every single person killed, except for Ensign George Gay, and I think he was on Torpedo 13. I know he was the guy who history said had the best seat in the war. He's in the middle of the Japanese fleet. He's shot down. He's in a 3-person aircraft. The other 2 guys die. He's on a raft. He's constantly ducking under the raft because he's being strafed by Japanese airplanes. But he is in the middle of the fleet. He's surrounded by aircraft carriers when the dive bombers come in, and he's floating in the water. He's got a ringside seat for all of it. That must have been something to see. But if you don't tell the story of the torpedo attack that was massacred, Ed Smith has it exactly, precisely right. That last sentence is one of the most profound sentences I have ever read concerning writing and show business. Let me imagine how hard it was to sink that carrier. How hard it was. How hard it was. Not how hard did I pull back on the stick for 4 seconds. Not showing me dipping a wing in the water to show how low I came. That's 5 seconds of screen time, and it's cheating anyway. Nobody believes that. Show me the guys. And furthermore, if you're going to do that, if I'm doing that movie, if I were making that movie again, I would develop. You can't develop all the characters. You can't develop 40 characters to the same degree, but I would certainly develop several characters from the torpedo squadron as much as I develop the guys from the dive bombing squadron, because for people who don't know either what happened or how it happened, you want to like all of these guys. You want to be emotionally connected to all these guys. So when these guys, this first wave goes in, and they're all killed, horribly, most of them, right, on fire, then it's like, oh, holy crap. And then the dive bombers come in, and you lose a ton of those. Show how hard it was and make it hurt. You gotta. This is what drama is, right? This is what drama is, and this is what these new writers, especially the ones with the political axe to grind, the woke writers, cannot handle. Since they are so insecure about themselves as women or or writers of color, whatever the thing is, since they have to show that they're so perfect and so capable, they can never fail. And since they can never fail, and since they can never be taught anything, since they walk into the universe perfectly formed with all of the powers anybody ever had, nobody cares. And that's what they did with Midway. You never showed the price of it. But if you, drama works because it's got to make it hurt. And when Han Solo gets encased in carbonite, that hurt. When he got stabbed on a bridge by a emo kid with a lightsaber, that didn't hurt. Because even though I was invested in Han Solo, I wasn't invested in that movie. In fact, that movie made me not like him. That's one of the intentions. He's kind of cranky and forgetful, and he's doing illegal things, and he can't fix his own ship. And thank God we've got this Ray there who's never been on board a spaceship ever to tell him how to fix his warp speed by bypassing the compressor. That's designed presumably to make Ray look smart and capable. All it does is make Han look like an idiot. So when Han Solo was Han Solo and he got encased in carbonite, that hurt. When he was a cranky old idiot, it didn't. I'll tell you what hurt the first time I saw it. When in Search for Spock, when I saw the Enterprise burning up in the atmosphere, that hurt. That hurt real bad. I was like, what? I've spent so much time on that ship. I know that ship better than these people do. I've spent so much time in there. And it's like, oh my God. And then you cut to the guys on the planet, and they are as shocked and as horrified and as amazed and awestruck as you are. It's like, oh my God, that's our home. There it goes. Dave Big Booty beat me to it. But I did have a line, my God, Bones, what have I done? And then Bones says, but don't read, I'm not looking for the line. Then Bones says a line that makes you understand Kirk, the Enterprise, Star Trek, all of it. Oh my God, Bones, what have I done? I've just destroyed my ship, which is my entire life. And Bones says, you did what you always do. You gave us a chance to live. All right, build another Enterprise. Can't build another McCoy. You did what you always do. Turn death into a fighting chance for life. That's the exact line. Turn death into a fighting chance for life. We can either be down here watching the Enterprise burn up, or we can be on the Enterprise. Those were our choices. Those were the two choices that were available. And Jim, you made the right decision. Stop beating yourself up. But it hurt. It hurt to watch. And then guess what? We have the first of the Next Generation movies, and we're going to crash that Enterprise too. What happened after that? You walk around searching for Cat and looking at little pieces of glass in the broken thing. Who cares? This is the essence of what I'm trying to get across with all of this stuff. And this is why Rings of Power has no power at all, because nothing hurts. Nothing hurts because you don't care about anything. And by the way, the fans are just they are so far out of the park on this one. And then Mobile Moto says, and then they started making crashing starships a plot device. Exactly. In Into Darkness on the reboot, you are led to believe in the trailer that the Enterprise crashes into the ocean. Enterprise goes down to the atmosphere in flames. Then you see this Enterprise-shaped thing into San Francisco Bay. It's a giant wall of water. Turns out it was the Vengeance, but Enterprise is on fire going down in the atmosphere. Then the Enterprise is destroyed in the next one, which I think about this Star Trek movie that I never saw. I had no desire to see. Get it free. I'm already paid for the subscription service. No desire to watch it at all. None. Zero. So you can only play that card so many times. Okay, Eric says he grew up with Next Generation. The crash of Picard's Enterprise affected me like the scene in Search for Spock did you. I'm glad to hear it. I don't think it was as well executed afterwards, but hey, that's what disagreements are all about. Anyway, It's got to hurt, yes. So we'll go back and get Eric's other question, then we'll take a couple questions from the comment stream, and then we'll call it an evening here. Second question, Hail Vectron, the little Hail Vectron. By Vectron's golden claw, may the creation of the universe of the colonies let our imaginary forces work. Thank you. Now, last week I pitched in the chat the concept of the Terex Engineering Corporation. Jim Terex is Elon Musk of the series time period. Company slogan, give us an engineering problem. What do you think? I'm eager to hear questions or comments to develop this concept further. I like it. I'm not entirely sure about that being the slogan. I like the name Terex, and I like the fact that somebody is as far ahead of the curve as SpaceX is. Now, to be honest with you, I kind of got that role assigned to Regan Dynamics because it's predicated on one of the defining aspects of Western civilization is quality over quantity, and this is the RK thing. Drink. But this is primal issue for me, right? Primal issue is if you've got quality on one side and quantity on the other, I will take the quality side every time, every single time. You know, our tanks and our jets were outnumbered 7-1 during the Cold War, something like that. And that meant they had to shoot down 7 of the other airplanes just to break even. And there was a lot of question about whether that could happen or not. Lenin himself said quantity has a quality all its own. He was right about that. Now, looking at the events in Ukraine, I'm going with quality. Put all that aside. When we get to this actual naval stuff, yeah, they can be competitors. In fact, if you're willing to take a dive into the dark side, Eric, I could frankly use a earthbound competitor to Regan Dynamics, which is almost the exact opposite. It's the General Motors, it's Boeing. It's Boeing. That's a harder thing to write, because you could backstory it and say it was formed by these guys, and then it became this bureaucracy. Anyway, you get the idea. And I'll work with you more serious about that when I'm ready in the future, Eric, but you get the idea. In the actual combat thing, you've got to have a small number of guys with better stuff up against a large number of guys with worse stuff. But you can take this too far. And the taking it too far is the Star Wars battle droid. What was he thinking? What was he thinking with those things? George Lucas is a terrible writer, and there's compelling evidence that George Lucas was not really responsible for Star Wars as it came out. Certainly the re-edit saved the movie. If you've seen some of the scenes they cut with what's his name? Mace? No. Wes, whatever, his friend. It looks like it was shot in high school on VHS. It's awful. So Biggs, thanks. So I don't think, wasn't C-3PO or was supposed to be like a used car salesman, and Luke was going to be like an old woman or something? I don't know, but I know that George Lucas's original idea for the characters was terrible. Whether or not he did the original Star Wars, I don't know. I do know that Empire Strikes Back is so good because he had a lot less to do with it, and when he started writing the prequels, I think that George Lucas is one of those people. He's one of these people that are on the spectrum. Needless to say, like the billionaires I've talked about, and I think George Lucas thinks that the battle droids are funny. I know he thinks that Jar Jar is funny. And the reason he thinks that Jar Jar is funny is because he doesn't have any human emotions the way that we understand them. Jar Jar Binks, the battle droids, and the I hate sand, it gets everywhere. That whole love story thing. He understands nothing. And man, Red Letter Media, in the 3 reviews of the prequels that Plinkett did, it just put the knife in deeper and deeper and deeper. Fiery Waco says Marcia Lucas saved Star Wars. I've heard that too. Until finally, I think on the last moments of the last review of the first trilogy, you've got basically all these shots of Lucas sitting in a chair. He's sitting in a chair, he's got his coffee, he's looking in, he's got this enormous green screen thing. He's happy. He's not out on location in the desert in Algeria or wherever they shot the first one, because that's uncomfortable and sweaty and hard, and problems come up. He's in this perfectly climate controlled, perfectly technologically controlled, sterile atmosphere. You've got actors who are looking at spots on the wall and trying to perform to those things, and it's garbage, and it shows. It just shows. It's just junk. One of the things that surprised me, talking about the original Lord of the Rings, one of the things that surprised me about Lord of the Rings was, I thought, man, when you first went into, like, when they tear down the trees, was that on the Two Towers? I honestly don't remember. That must have been. No, it was in Fellowship, right? So you there's this shot where you can see Orthanc, the tower, and you look down, you see the trees going over, and you fly in there, and you see all these underground layers and flames and everything, and all of this detail. I said, this is 2000 that this was done. It was released in 2001. I looked at this and said, my God, these are incredible CG. And then Gondor, when you got to see Gondor, I said, look how fantastic this looks. It looks great. And the tower, the big tower, I told you the drive is full. The Barad-dûr. Is it Barad-dûr? These things look fantastic. They look great. And I find out the reason they look so great is because they're not CG. They're miniatures, which, as Conductor Productions points out, were renamed from miniatures to bigatures by Weta. The city is a real, practical, it's gigantic. I think the model's like 15, 16 feet high, or maybe even higher. And they took it outside, and they shot it outside. You know why? Because sunlight, atmosphere, air, all of this stuff is very difficult to get exactly right. So they shot these moving shots around these bigatures. They used lenses that made it look big. And then they went in and put in CG horses and soldiers and flames and all the rest of it. Now that's, FN Geek AZ says, Weta for the win. Weta, I don't know if it's still the case, but certainly that's 20 years ago now. Can you believe it? 22 years ago? 21? Weta were just the best. And all of their practical work. And Peter Jackson understood practical stuff always looks better than CGI, and I'm about to do a CGI series, and I'm telling you, practical stuff looks better. There's just no way to do the colonies. You could do the colonies with live action actors, but you'd multiply the cost of it by a factor of 20. Because if you use live actors for the colonies, you'd have to build sets, costumes, you'd have to do all of this stuff. Even if you were to do it like Mandalorian, where you're doing virtually your entire backgrounds in CG, it's still much, much, much more expensive than, I mean, I can do photorealistic colonies in a box right now. But when you look at the orcs in Lord of the Rings, and then you look at the orcs in The Hobbit, which was what, 12, 14 years later or something? The orcs and the goblins in The Hobbit look like garbage. And it looks like garbage because it's CG. The original Lord of the Rings, they looked so good because they were big men in makeup that took hours and hours and hours, and they were in the real world interacting with real people, and that's why the original Lord of the Rings is so spectacular. Just think about that fight at the end of Fellowship with with Boromir and the orcs, where they're running down the hill, right? And they're running around, you get shot with the arrows. Just think about how awful that would have looked if that was CG. I mean, the reason that was so believable was because it was like, my God, it's right there. These guys are holding real swords. It was just fantastic. And this brings up an interesting point about filmmaking, kids, and this is a point I sometimes have problems with myself. And that is the frame that you deliver, 30 a second or 24 a second if you want it to look like a movie, and I do 24 frames a second, you determine what goes into that frame. It is a two-dimensional image, and how you get that frame does not matter. It doesn't matter. To a large degree, people have to be very detail-oriented. I'm kind of like this too. I'm a little bit obsessive about these things, like, oh, this back of the ship isn't completely textured right, or so this kind of bothers me. It's like, no one's going to see the back of the ship. Yeah, but it should be. No one's going to see the back of the ship. So stop wasting time. Stop wasting time. Do what you have to do. And Lord of the Rings is a perfect example. We got CG flames. We got a CG horse. We got a practical thing. We got this. It's fantastic. So, yeah. All right. So I take a couple questions. Why don't we? What time is it? Let's take 2 or 3. Hey, somebody mentioned Sean Bean from Lord of the Rings, and then somebody mentioned Sharp. First time I saw Sean Bean was in a series called Sharp's Rifles, which was fantastic. It highly, highly recommended. It's just great. Sharp's Rifles is great. It's set in the Napoleonic Wars, and Sharp is a British officer who comes up through the ranks, and he's got a bunch of picked men who actually have rifled muskets, and so they're an elite unit. It's a fantastic series. I loved it. Love Sharp's Rifles. Fantastic. Okay, so do a couple questions. So whoever gets there first is going to get the draw, and then we'll do 2 or 3 of those and we'll pack it up. And we'll go back working on texturing. I have better things to do with my time, but I got to do it. Somebody's got to do it. So here we are, just sitting here waiting for the comment stream to kick out a question. It's lonely life. Lonely life. Yep, not a lot going on. Kind of quiet here in Lake Wobegon. Just sit around the porch, chew on some straw. Conductor Productions, do you want a student? Yes, I want everybody. Yes. And, okay, so hang on now. Now they're coming in fast and furious. Eric, I can't take. I appreciate the pitch. I just can't take it right now. But yes, it looks good. So to the student question, I'm going to just say this as plainly as I can, because this is a kind of a problem, not just for me, but in show business in general, right? On one level, show business is locked out in the way that everything else is locked out. There is very little. It's a difficult thing to find a way to work your way up from the mailroom. If you decide to go out to a construction site, which I respect enormously, you can be given jobs that help the assembly of the house. I mean, the work that you're doing is going into the house, even if you're just bringing in plaster or whatever. But there are a series of jobs that you can do. Build up a skill set, apprentice with somebody else, figure out how to do that. Then they give you like the out of the way stuff to do that, to practice on, and then you kind of get there, and so on and so on and so on. A bag of Sprite, though, I have to answer that. He's got a comment in the comment section here, but he says it sexually identifies as a Facebook question, so I have to take it. So there's a pathway. In the old days of my dad, in the 60s, 50s, 60s, you want to be president of the corporation, you start in the mailroom. You sort and deliver mail, and you work your way up to junior ad exec and then senior. And there's just this path. So when it comes time to do something creative, it's a lot more difficult, because it's got to end up on the screen. If it's got to end up on the screen, it's got to look great. So with that said, one of the things I want to accomplish with this is to set up a studio that outlives me by a long stretch. It gives conservatives a chance to make some movies and have some fun and just, and we're sitting here talking about Star Trek now, and Roddenberry died in, 98, so, 24 years ago, something like that. So to answer your question a little more specifically about students, I've seen some people have submitted some reels, and if you're one of them, I'm not talking about you, I'm talking about somebody else's reel. And the stuff was, promising, but certainly not usable. 91, really. So the hard thing is finding stuff for students to do that isn't busy work, something that can show up in the story, but there is no middle ground here, right? You see what I'm saying? That frame, that finished frame, has got to go out the door. Each one of those frames has to look professional, and one bad frame can really do you a lot of damage. So all I'm saying here is, yes, I'd love to have students and people who are just getting started and all that stuff. I just don't know exactly how to pull that off yet, but there is a way to do it. One thing that would be really useful to me would be people that can get in there and specialize in certain things. That's really what I need right now. I give you one example that comes to mind. Not ever emailed you, Bill? Do it, conductor. Go for it, man. Yeah, Ed Smith says master painters had their students painting leaves, trees, and grass. Exactly. And there's some evidence that even on some of Da Vinci's work or Michelangelo's work, you can tell that his students did these background characters. So really, what I really need right now is I need specialists. If I'm going to make the connection tonight, going to try and contact the third time now with somebody who's already had experience with the deep fake, because if I have to do that myself, it's just going to hurt my brain. It's going to take too long. So if somebody had been studying like Face Labs and really knew deep fake, I could use that person right now. Could hire them, actually. Not a tremendous amount of money, but if we get the raise, then we could pay you. That's the kind of thing. It's an interesting idea. G.K. Masterson says, have you considered using fan film animation stuff as entertainment that the colonists watch? It's a very interesting idea. There are things that are always going to be going on. You're going to have in any civilized area, there's going to be background monitors that go back to the vanishing point. And given the state of large screen TV, see, this is the kind of thing I've been talking about again and again and again. It's like, think it through, right? Think it through. The inside of an airport is not going to look like an airport. It's going to look like a tropical rainforest, and then it's going to look like the Arctic, because the walls are going to be absolutely seamless 8K video, and not just little bits of the wall, the whole wall, all of it. Be nothing but ads, and the ads will follow you or whatever. So right now I need specialists. If I had a person who was really excellent text, here's what I need right now. I need a really good texture guy. I need a really good rigger, somebody who can rig a mesh for animation. I need somebody who knows deepfake. I think it's Face Labs, Deep Face Labs, something like that. I certainly need modelers, but really, now this is something that a student could do. I need people who can clean up models, because this thing that I just showed you, the orange spaceship, I mean, the thing looks great, but it's got no texture coordinates on it. I had to go in and it's probably 400 parts, and I had to go put a texture map on it. Does this take a box? Is it a cylinder? Is it cap the cylinder? You put it on there, and just tedious stuff. Tedious, horrible, tedious, soul-destroying stuff. And it not only eats my time, it eats my enthusiasm. So all of that stuff. Yeah, that's right. Not George is thinking. You could pay extra money to register your phone as an anti-advertising creature gun. Yes. All of this stuff is great. One of my favorite moments that I've just got sketched out is right at the beginning before the homesteader family leaves the earth. He's in a store. He's like in a convenience store, and it's got a cyberpunk kind of a feel to it, you know. So he's not in a great neighborhood, and that's why he's leaving, because of the crime. And he goes in to buy something, and his social credit score, they can't sell it to him. He's got the money. They can't sell it to him because his social credit score is so low. So low because he made a comment about something, and he's a rebellious guy. Okay, so he's like sitting there talking to this clerk, and there's a line of people waiting, you know, come on, man, let's move. And then the clerk says, you could, I mean, if you really want to instantly raise your credit score, you just go over there and vote a few times. That'll do it. So he's, okay, he walks over to the corner where the lotto machine would be in a 7-Eleven now, and votes for president 5 or 6 times. And he votes for the approved president 5 or 6 times. And his credit score goes up, his social credit score goes up instantly. He can buy the stuff. That's how you show people instead of tell people. That's how you show them what voting can devolve to if we don't hold it as sacrosanct. This is where we're headed. We're headed into a world where my social score is bad. I better go vote for Joe Biden 15 times. That'll do it. Yeah, all right, great, fantastic. So those are little tiny little transactions, right? That's not, you don't build an episode around that. That's just, it's a 2-minute scene, and you're not even going to a whole lot of trouble. I'm tempted to have him do it in the background, honestly, but that 2-minute scene does something really important. It gives you a reason for why honest people have to leave, right? The frontier is a horrible, violent, nasty, uncomfortable place, and to go to the frontier requires a big push as well as a pull. And the push is, this place sucks. I hate it. I hate everything about it. And this guy is an honest guy. He's a fundamentally honest guy. And he just can't stand the fact that he has to lie to get through life all the time, and his wife is the same way. That's why they decide to go. They're going to go risk their lives and their families' lives and just jump off in the middle of nowhere. And they're going to do it because not because the city life has gotten so dangerous, because it's dangerous out there too, but because they cannot stand the fact that they have to lie every day. Every day about something or other, they have to lie. They have to nod their heads at things they know are not true, and they have to shake their heads at things that they know to be true. They got to shut up. They got to be quiet. Keep their head down, and they're done. They're done. So, so that's a great little scene that serves the purpose in the first episode of showing you why this family is moving. You got to give them a why. If you're a real writer, you got to give them a why. I could just put them on a boat and leave it at that, but then you've just got the kind of garbage that Discovery is. I need something to happen, so I'm going to make it happen. So it not only motivates this enormous decision, it provides you emotional reference for why somebody's doing this. You're not going to ask that question in advance, but your brain will know, as Mr. Plinkett says, right? Your brain will know. So we've given him a good reason, another reason to leave the earth, and we've made a comment on voter integrity without saying Republican or Democrat or Trump or Biden or anything. We've just shown, okay, this is what happens when you let anybody vote with no ID. Just walk over and vote as many times as you want to. So there you go. It's hard for me to keep up sometimes here. Somebody just, this one, The Big House. I think this will be the last one, gang. It's 8 o'clock, and I'm going to take my lovely wife out for dinner in an hour or so. The colonies, lasers or firearms or other? That's a fantastic question. I think you would probably, this is the kind of thing you need to puzzle out and work out, and this is what we will be continuing to do on this show, is just have a group discussion about it. If I had to say off the top of my head that I would probably use lasers against flying vehicles, because by definition they have to be relatively fragile. Airplane's got a strong wing spar, but the skin is, you know. I remember when I first saw like 12 O'Clock High, it was a TV show about B-17s, and you'd see the bullets or the flak coming through the metal, and I'd say, how did it get through the metal, Dad? You know, it's just metal, they're surrounded by metal, they're safe. It's paper thin, Bill. Just shrapnel goes right through it. So I'd probably use lasers against targets like that, and I might use lasers in space for long range, but they will be invisible in space. Lasers can be used to blind the pilots, yes, also the sensors. The problem with using lasers on living creatures is it makes a real clean hole and it cauterizes itself. So I'm thinking if you were going to shoot somebody with a laser, presumably it's going to be pulsed, right? You know, boom, 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 put 15 pencil-sized holes in somebody and they're all cauterized. I'm not saying he won't die from it eventually, but it's not got stopping power. In fact, by definition, it doesn't have any stopping power because there's no mass going there. So I think it would be a combination of both. Laser might be a good sniper weapon, maybe. Drill a hole in somebody's head without having to deal with windage or the delay. So to answer your question, the answer would depend on the situation, and we would have to have it thought out. Right? Thought out. This guy's got a laser weapon? Yes. Really? Sounds like they're kind of delicate, and aren't they going to cauterize all the holes in people? Yes, that's why the rest of the troops have caseless bullpup assault weapons. And I've got a laser because I am a sniper, and I can hit a guy from 4 miles away and drill a hole about that big into his brain and cauterize that all you want to. I know where to hit him, and we don't have to deal with wind drift. We don't have to deal with any of that stuff. So there's actually an interesting, speaking of lasers in an atmosphere, when I was looking into anti-missile defense, the idea is you shoot a laser beam at what you're shooting at, a lower powered one, and it heats the air up enough so that the air expands out of the way, and then you put your killing beam through there so it's not diffused by the atmosphere. I think it's called an annular something or other. You basically just punch a hole in the air and then you put the beam through. And when I was looking at 40K stuff and hearing the lasers go crack, 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 I thought, hey, where's that noise coming from? It could be the noise from the collapsing heat tunnel. Lightning is just air smashing into each other. I'm sorry, thunder. So it could be. But yeah, and Mobile Moto says gunpowder is oxidizer. You can fire a gun in space, work just fine. Spaces be where your lasers would be most effective because the laser doesn't like to be diffused by the atmosphere. One of the things, Fire says, they have lasers, polish your armor. Man, exactly. So if you're talking about space combat, then a kinetic weapon is a kill weapon. You could punch a bunch of holes in something with a laser beam and not damage it at all, really. But you hit it with something that's moving at, 20, 30,000 miles an hour, it's gonna be a kill shot. Now this is where the space combat gets interesting. So kinetic weapons definitely more destructive than an energy weapon, but the range is an entirely different thing. Because that kinetic weapon, even if it's moving at hypervelocity speeds, say it's moving at Mach 10 or higher, it's still got to cover that distance. It's not ever going to get anything close to the speed of light. So a laser weapon, you can put on target not because it reaches further. Technically speaking, you could fire a slug out of a railgun, and it would just go to the end of the universe. But light is moving so much faster that you can target. And so if I launch a railgun slug and the ranges are realistically long enough, a couple 100,000 kilometers, I said kilometers, I almost said kilometers, my God, stop. Say I'm shooting from the moon, trying to hit something at the moon from Earth orbit, right? And I shoot a slug at it. It's going to take a while for that slug to get there. It's going to take the laser beam about a half a second, 3/4 of a second. So now you get into what would space combat actually genuinely be like. I'm going to go with what seems logical. You're going to have a sphere around your ship that will be the effective range of whatever weapon you have. And it seems to me that you would want to have some deadly weapons for the close-up fight that won't be effective at long range. Then you'd have some other long-range weapons that can either blind the guy. 1.5 seconds is the round trip, isn't it, Dave? Nope, you're right. It's a one-way trip. It's 186 miles a second. You're right, second and a half. So you would engage with lasers at long distance and try to punch some holes in something that hurt, and use it to dazzle their sensors and all the other stuff. You'd use slug weapons up close where the time delay from gun to target is not that significant, and in between you've got missiles. Yes, the laser's not in infinite range. Nothing is infinite range. Technically, if I wanted to shoot something at Pluto and I could be assured of hitting it, I'd rather shoot a slug out of a railgun than a laser, because a slug doesn't have to deal with the inverse square law. But here's the thing that takes guts. And it's the only word for it, I think, is just courage. Storytelling, confidence is a better word, really. If I'm going to shoot a ship with a laser beam in space, and I'm going to do this in a TV show, then I have to explain why. I don't mean talk why. I mean I have to let the audience know why they can't see the beam, and why the beam doesn't go, get out of the way, here comes a laser beam. Invisible, nearly instantaneous. How do you deal with that in space? The only reason you can see a laser beam at all is because of the dust particles are reflecting light back to your eye. That's an interesting thing about light, you know. My wife, who understands light better than anybody else I've ever met as a photographer, I don't think she really fully realized this. If you were in a vacuum or an incredibly clean room, I could be sitting here looking out here, and the most powerful beam of light in the universe could be going that way, and I wouldn't see it. It doesn't have to be a laser either. You can't see light. All you can do is see what light reflects back. So in space, you use lasers in space. They're effective because there is no atmosphere, but you can't see them. So how do you have... I really do want to end on this, because this is the essence of what I'm trying to do here. This really needs to be understood, what I'm trying to do here, okay? Space combat has gone through a couple of different iterations. In the Star Trek days, it was like combat between two ships. Part of that was because they didn't have the special effects budget to put the Klingon ship and the Enterprise in the same frame, which made it much more believable. Enterprise fires phasers, the Klingon ship gets hit, it's some distance away. Now you're still going with the stars past, but you get it, right? So you got that. And then by the time you get to Star Wars, you get World War II in space. George Lucas just took a look at footage from Memphis Belle and fighters attacking bombers and put turrets in there and peeling away, peeling on. So it's essentially fighter planes. It's fighter planes in space. That's totally unbelievable. And then it got to the point where it became galleons in space, where you'd have these two enormous ships just going past each other. I'm thinking to myself, instead of shooting 15 different laser beams at this thing, why not just have a real big, powerful laser beam that would kill it? And it's like, you know, shields. We don't have shields. There are no shields. Generally speaking, if you can hit with the weapon, you can kill with the weapon. So how does that work? What does that look like? Well, there is an overwhelmingly good case to be made for there being no stealth in space, at least for military vessels. If you're going to have a crew on board, that thing's got to be livable, and that temperature is hundreds of degrees Kelvin, and the background radiation of space is 4 degrees Kelvin. So whatever you've got, will, if you're looking for it, will just glow hot in the infrared, and so you'll be able to detect things not only across a solar system, you should be able to detect things at other solar systems. You had a wide enough mirror for the resolution. So if everybody knows where everybody is, the great example was used for modern submarine combat, sub-to-sub combat is, it's like playing blind man's bluff with bazookas. In fact, a really great book on submarines, I think, was called Blind Man's Bluff. Blind Man's Bluff was bazookas. So sub-combat basically means I go into a room with something over my eyes, and somewhere in this enormous room is somebody else with something over his eyes. We both have bazookas, which means that all I have to do is hit the guy, or even get close to him, and he's gone in one shot. Don't have to keep putting rounds on him. So now everything comes down to who's the first person to detect the other one and get the shot off. That's what submarine combat is. No cloaking devices, none of that magic, none of it. No shields, nothing. Now, that's great for subcombat, and shows like The Expanse try to do that. Oh, we've got stealth technology. Well, there is no stealth technology. Although, in the naval combat story, I'm going to have a young and very ambitious and very smart, really kind of the lead character in the naval combat thing, who's done the engineering and says we can have a ship, we can have equivalent of a submarine in space. And the brass says, we've been having this discussion for 250 years. It's ridiculous, it's not possible. It is possible under an extremely limited set of circumstances. If you've got if you've got humans inside the ship, you can cool it down quite a bit with liquid hydrogen. You can cool it down quite a bit to maybe 30, 40 Kelvin, something like that, I think. But if you use liquid helium, you can cool it down to about 6, 7 degrees Kelvin, which is pretty nearly background radiation. Now, there's two problems with this. One of them is, if you don't want to encase the entire length of the ship, and you don't have to, because the more coolant you put in there, the more you've got the heat distribution problem. But you could cool just the nose of the ship, or you could put in front of you essentially a liquid hydrogen, liquid helium shield, heat shield, like on the web. And this works as long as you are fighting against one other vessel and there are no other sensors in the area, right? So the reason that you could probably conceivably get stealth in space is you could get stealth in space in a one-on-one combat in a straight line. Anybody who's off that axis will be able to see around the part of you that you're able to get down that cool, and then then you're detected. However, somebody, a bag of Sprite said autonomous space vehicles. I'll come back to that. I heard this argument about and I spent a lot of time on this. Folks, I spent a lot of time in this. Looked at the best cases for stealth, arguments against, so on. So that seems to be technically possible, and I like that because it means that you can't just pop out of, suddenly appear on people's sensor screens, right? It's a specific ship. It has to be small. It has to be a submarine. It has to be small, has to carry a deadly weapon, has to fire that weapon and kill on the first shot, or else it's going to be destroyed by the punchback. So, if you're not talking about a stealth ship, which we're going to develop, called the Nautilus, I think, a warship would be a vessel that would have a number of different weapons on it, and stay with me on this now. Its effective range is going to be limited by its power output, because your long-distance weapons are going to be energy weapons. So the more power you can generate, the further out you can reach out and touch somebody. That works towards a larger ship. But, so imagine you've got, just for the sake of the argument, we'll use these terms. Let's say you've got a battleship and a frigate, and the battleship is able to generate enough energy to put out a wide area of effective fire, a big sphere, right? All it has to do is close on that frigate and blow it out of the water. It will be able to engage and destroy the frigate before the frigate's weapons come into range. So, the actual defining quality of a warship will be delta V. That's where I've driven this. Now, I love to have people tell me, no, there's more steps I'm thinking of, but to me, it comes down to delta V. Delta V is the ability to change your velocity. In other words, the single most important characteristic will be if you've got a large sphere, you're this battleship, right? True, you can destroy this frigate before it can touch you, but if the frigate is able to be more agile than you, then it will never get into your kill zone, ever. You chase it around the solar system till you die. If the thing's got more delta V, and it makes sense because it'd be a smaller ship, less mass and so on. So, okay, so that's, now you've got the kind of the beginnings of understanding how space combat could be portrayed. It's got to be like, okay, do you want a big ship that can reach out and hit somebody, or do you want an agile ship that can duck in close and get there? And that leads you to all kinds of other things too. I happen to think, some of you will know what this is. I think it might have been Winston Churchill's personal invention. But there was a period, I don't remember if it was I know it was in the Second War, it might have been in the First as well, but I'm pretty sure it was the Second War. There was something called a Q ship. And what a Q ship was it was a regular transport, just looked like a transport because that's what it was. And they had canvas siding on it, painted over with, portals and all the rest of the stuff. And it was used against German submarines that would open up on the surface. Now, I've spent a lot of time in a German U-boat sub-simulator. And the thing about that is you go out with 16 torpedoes or whatever the case may be, 20, whatever, right? So you've got these ship-killing weapons. But if you've got an unarmed merchant on the surface, you don't want to waste a torpedo on a transport when you can sink it with the deck gun, and the deck gun you've got hundreds of shells for. Why not just sink it with hold on to your torpedo for something either that fights back or something that's a bigger target. So in the beginning days of the war, the U-boats would more often than not, when they had, especially if they had a small transport, they would surface and just shoot the hell out of this transport with the deck gun. And that was effective. It's a daytime attack or a nighttime attack, but it's a surface attack. You're using the gun, and you can do it. Your sub is more fragile even than the civilian transport is, but if it's not shooting back, who cares? So I think it was Churchill who said, okay, what we're going to do is we're going to put some guns on transports, and we're going to cover them up, and when the U-boat surfaces to start shooting at us with the deck gun, then we're going to drop these canvas sides, and we're going to blow that goddamn U-boat out of the water, because by the time this guy realizes he's getting shot back, we should be able to sink him before he can button up and dive. And that was called a Q ship. Now the essence of a Q ship is it's essentially a lie. And this connects to something else historically. In the age of sail, the golden age of sail, it was not only not uncommon, it was standard operating practice to carry any number of flags of different countries, because you've got the same problem that you have in deep space. Your detection range is much greater than your weapons range. Just think this through with me here. If you're talking about the golden age of sail, I can see a ship on the horizon miles and miles and miles away, especially if I'm up at the top of the masts there. I can see that thing 20, 30 miles away. The weapons range, the cannonball range, is probably a couple hundred yards maximum, right? So I can see that thing way before I can shoot at that thing and hit it. So, how do you sink another ship? If you're faster than that other ship is, you can just outrun him and blast him to pieces. But if he's faster than you and not inclined to fight, and you need to get into weapons range, one thing you could do is you look at that ship and you see that ship is flying a French flag. So you get your giant French pennant and you run it up. And this guy is watching you coming over the horizon, closing, and all he sees is that big French flag fluttering in the background. He's thinking, okay, this is probably one of ours. When you get close up, John Paul Jones fought this way all the time. It was standard procedure. John Paul Jones would fly the British ensign, get right in the middle of a British squadron, drop the ensign. That's an honorable thing to do before you start shooting. Before you start shooting, you drop the ensign, you run up the Stars and Stripes. He was the first guy to sail with the Stars and Stripes, by the way, with the American flag as we know it today. So he gets up where he wants to be. He's in position where he wants to be. He's been using this deception. It's not a invisibility cloak. It's a literally it's a wolf in sheep's clothing. It's a wolf wearing a sheepskin. Gets right in the middle of the sheep, drops the sheepskin, starts doing his wolf thing, starts firing and so on. And that is something that you can do in this world. If I've got an American corvette, right, a revenue ship or just a Coast Guard cutter, essentially, something with a smallish gun on it, but basically a regulatory ship, which is where this lieutenant's going to start the story. And he's going after these illegal miners who are working an asteroid that doesn't belong to them. They'll be able to see this ship coming in way before those weapons are in effective range, so he's going to have to come in like another pirate. He's going to have to come in with the same signature. He's going to have to come in at non-military Delta V burns. The only chance he has of catching these guys is to either come in close enough under the sheep's cover, or just plain outrun one of them. Because if those things start to scatter like hogs in the Texas, middle of the Texas plains at nighttime, you take one shot at one of them and the rest of them just go running in every direction. You could run down one of those guys, but now you need a lot of Delta V. If you got a lot of Delta V, that means you got a lot of fuel. You got a lot of fuel, that means so. It's a balance. I don't have the rules, the precise rules, but that's a balance issue. So now you get back to interesting questions. Which do you want? Do you want a large number of smaller ships with shorter range weapons but very high Delta V, or do you want a smaller number of very big powerful ships with a much larger range? Which one do you want? And that kind of gets us back to the quantity and quality kind of thing. I'm going to have our opponents go with the big battleships. And we're going to have the small, agile frigates. And that's an economic argument as well as a military argument. The Yamato and the Musashi, those Japanese super battleships that were built under tarps, all the canvas in that entire region of Japan, they had to commandeer to find tarps big enough to build these things underneath. So you got these two super battleships with 18-inch guns. The next closest gun in the world is 16-inch gun, like on the Iowa, which didn't come out till late in the war. So you've got these two super battleships, and you've invested just think about how much money and manpower and war effort you put into these two super battleships. So the war starts, and the aircraft carriers go do what they do at Pearl Harbor, and Yamato, I'm pretty sure, was on the strike force behind the carriers and so on. So you've got half of your naval budget in these two giant warships. Okay, well, once it becomes clear that the enemy can attack with airplanes, you don't send them out. Yamato and Musashi spent most of the war in the Japanese inland sea, in between the islands, completely safe, and they didn't sail them because they were too valuable. Think about that. We can't use this weapon because it's too valuable. In other words, we've spent so much money on the Yamato that if we put the Yamato out in combat and it gets sunk by American carrier aviation, then we'll have lost this enormous asset. And think about the morale boost, and think of how it'll weaken the Navy. Japanese Navy is obsessed with decisive battle. We're going to have one battle that's going to go perfectly according to our plan. We're going to have a super brilliant plan, and then we're going to use everything in our perfect pieces, and we're going to destroy the American Navy in an afternoon. That's their entire war strategy. That's why they lost, among many other reasons. So, historically, I'm 98% sure of these numbers. Musashi never hit an enemy warship. The only time Musashi's guns were ever fired in anger was at incoming airplanes. They had these things called beehive rounds with these giant 18-inch guns that are doing anti-aircraft fire. The Musashi was built to sink anything in the world, and it never, ever, ever got to fire its weapons against another ship. It went to the bottom, and all it ever did was shoot at American airplanes, and I'm not sure that it took many of those down either. Right? So think about that. Yamato was part of the task force on the Tappy 3 battle, so Yamato put some rounds into 3 destroyers, a destroyer escort, and 1 escort carrier. And they didn't do most of the work, but conceivably they hit those things, which combined together might have weighed what 1 turret on the Yamato weighs. So my point is, they were catastrophic mistakes, these super gigantic, all-powerful battleships. Think of the number of transports and the number of tankers that they could have built, given the resources they put into Yamato and Musashi. So now we got something interesting, right? Now we've got something interesting. Now we've got space combat, which is not like... Now it's like, okay, we're closing. How good is his target solution? How good is his weaponry? When you're talking about hundreds of thousands of miles, you're talking about milliradians, right? It's just the tiniest little deviation at that distance, and your beam goes, miles wide. How good's our targeting solution? How good is our aiming software? How good is our aiming hardware? What weapons do we have? How much range do they have? Can we get in close? Is this ship likely to be more powerful than us? Before you engage the ship, if you don't know what it is, and you should, then you say, okay, well, we could close on this thing and get him inside our weapons range, but if he's got bigger guns than we do, we're toast. So King of Clean says it kind of sounds like our carrier fleet. It is very similar to that in a way. You don't sail the fleet into places where the fleet doesn't have its full reach. So the Aegis system on board the destroyers and cruisers that escort our carriers can tell a sparrow flying through the air out to about 200 miles. That's really true, a sparrow. That's how sensitive these things are. If you do anything like sail that task force into a straits in between land, if you do anything to narrow that sensor range, that means that there's just that much less time for you to activate countermeasures against weapons that are coming in. You want to be able to see to the horizon. You want to be able to see that 200-300 miles out there, here come a couple bombers, and I'm going to send out my jets. Here come a couple warships, I'm going to send out my jets. Or I'm going to launch my missiles against him. You don't want the battle space compacted. So all of this stuff is interesting. And which strategy do you take? Commanding an aircraft carrier battle group is very different than commanding a destroyer or a frigate on its own. But I do like the fact that the opponents are addicted to gigantism the way that the Japanese were, the way that the Nazis were, and the way that the Soviets were. There's something about a totalitarian state that really, really digs super weapons because it's all about prestige. So I think that's it. So, all right, so you don't see the laser beams. So you got the ship's hull, and all of a sudden there's this brilliant glitter on it. And frankly, the beam is probably invisible even with fog because it's probably an X-ray laser or something. You're just sailing along, mind your own business. All of a sudden there's this glitter on the side of your hull and explosive decompression. Well, that's new. That's different. Haven't seen that before. Oh, we just got bombed. Hey, we're talking about space combat. Hi, everybody. Thanks for getting sent over here. So we're talking about ship-to-ship combat and science fiction in space. And we're talking about how we're going to do this based on the real world and how different that looks from everything you've ever seen. So just to recap, for those of us who are new, we pretty much doubled our audience. Welcome. Spaceship combat in movies and in TV has been handled in a number of ways, and none of them are real. For those of you here from the beginning, I know this is a recap, but nevertheless, here we go. So if you look at the original Star Trek TV show, they didn't have the budget to put 2 ships in the same shot. Special effects were optical effects done with film, and they were expensive. So in Star Trek, the original series, you'd see the Enterprise fire its phasers, and then you'd see the Klingon ship take a hit, and since they weren't in the same frame, it gave you the impression that they were far away, which is what you would expect. That's what you want. Then Star Wars comes onto the scene in 1977, which is essentially World War II in space. Now you've got these ships that are 5 feet away from these turrets, right? So the weapon ranges are much shorter, and there's a lot more action going on. And then you get to the place where they did this to some degree in the later Star Trek shows, and they did it real badly in Prelude to Axanar, the fan fiction thing, where now you've got the ships that it's like dogfights. And the thing is, it's a quarter mile away in trail, and it's shooting laser beams, and it's missing, right? It's ridiculous. It's just ridiculous. It's insane. Also, when you get into the Star Wars era, and 40K is like this, but 40K is its own world, and Warhammer 40K can do whatever it wants to. But then, in later Star Wars things, you see these two enormous ships passing each other, which is like 2 galleons, right? 2 giant sailing ships just unloading these broadsides. None of these hits kill the ship. You used to have to, something like HMS Victory could put out a 200, 300 round broadside, but that wouldn't be enough to sink another ship of the line. You'd have to do that a few times. Now, you put out one missile and it's gone. So, you got all of this stuff. And so I've just been speculating here with everybody about what actual space combat would look like. Since space is cold, and since anything with people on it is hot, you get to see anybody anywhere. There is no real stealth. So we're talking about weapon ranges, engagement. We're talking about how quickly can you, or how much can you alter your vector, and so on. And one last thing, this is new for our fans, and for those of you who just showed up, very glad to see you. Hope you come back. But we're just about to wrap this up. One thing about space combat is that there will be a high noon quality to it. In other words, if you've decided to engage this ship, and it's either decided to engage you or is running for it, you know where the effective limit of your weapons are, and if he's coming at you especially, it's a little more dramatic, but you're going to know hours or days in advance that you're going to meet out there at this point, and you get to sit and think about it, which is the worst of the worst, right? So you don't get this lasers kind of thing, but what you do get is, okay, now we're within he's within our maximum range of our laser weapons, and all of a sudden there's a hole in the side of your ship, and you realize this guy's got a 17 gigawatt laser that you had no idea was there, and now you're in real trouble. So all of this is completely different. It's not sub-combat, it's not space, it's not like anything we've ever seen before. And it's really dramatic. And it's dramatic because it's real. And so you can't see laser beams in space. And frankly, I think it's much more dramatic to just be sitting here like we're talking right now and then suddenly have that wall just blow out in the middle of a word because we took a hit and we took a hit. So if you know you're going to go into battle, you decompress the ship before you start doing this. Just turn the whole inside into a vacuum. Everybody gets into a spacesuit because you don't want that explosive decompression. No one is talking about this kind of stuff. The Expanse got semi-close, but their missiles were silly and their railguns were kind of silly too. So there you go. This is what we're trying to do with this colonies thing. So for those of you who just showed up, most of you come and dropped your emojis and icons and gone. But if you're here for the first time and you want to hear more of this, we're on Monday nights at 6 Pacific, 9 Eastern on Monday, and we talk about science fiction, Unreal Engine animation, and all the rest of it. And at this point, I'm going to close this baby down because it's time for me to go. But thanks to all of you again for doing that. I'll leave you with one last look at that. One last look at that animation, that render test that I did from the thing. It's barely. Let's see. Here it comes. Last time. It needs a lot of work, but you get the idea. Watching those textures break up at the end there without the coordinates on it, there's still a lot of work to do. All right, well, it's been fun. And it's been real. And it's been real fun. We will see you next Monday here on Stratosphere Studio, and we will see you here Thursday night for Stratosphere Lounge. So until then, you all keep your powder dry and all the rest of that stuff, and thanks for joining us, and we'll see you in a couple days.